We're in to deal with them. We've got former Senator Nick Minchin, Finance Minister in the Howard government, and economist Dr. Richard Dennis, head of the Australia Institute. Before we get into that, Nick, you're from South Australia. Reports Mike Rann has been told by the faction bosses, step down, and he says, I'm not going.
Well, I'm not surprised. The Rann government is going nowhere. They've stalled in the blocks. They're down in the polls. They're looking in trouble. Rann was always going to go this term. The question was when. He wanted to dictate the timing. The factions are saying, sorry, fella, you're going to have to go now. And so they've done a deal, and it looks like Jay Weatherill from the left will become Premier.
The left? Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's a very moderate... look, from the Labor Party point of view, it's a sensible outcome. And it will mean that the Liberals are now going to have a fight on their hands over the next 2 or 3 years up to the next election. But Mike Rann isn't going to go quietly, and he could well, if he's forced out, cause a by-election. Kevin Foley may also go and cause a by-election. Now, they may hang on to those seats, but they only have a very small margin. So I think South Australian politics could be very interesting over the next few months, because this is going to be very messy.
There's some parallels here with federal Labor too, isn't there, Richard?
Oh, look, I think, you know, Mike Rann's been there for a long time. The way parties handle these generational changes is important, and not too surprised to see a Premier doesn't want to be forced out of office, so not quite sure what the parallel there is.
It's about a Prime Minister hanging on, and leadership changes, and one seat could change it. But look, let's talk about the trouble. We've got the inflation figure coming out this week, 3.6%. That's a worry. House prices down across the nation, the capital cities, for 6 months in a row. Are we heading for maybe even stagflation, as some economists say? Look,
I think it's a troubled world environment at the moment, but obviously there's a lot of people around the world getting out of Europe, getting out of the US, and a lot of that money's still coming here to Australia. The Australian dollar at $1.10 US doesn't suggest that other countries are too worried about where we're at. But in terms of inflation, I mean, do we want house prices to go up, or do we want them to come down? One week we're worried about affordability.
You're talking to me, house owner me?
Well, indeed.
I'll tell you what I want.
But 1 week we're worried about affordability and they're too expensive and young people can't get a foot in the door, and the next week we're worried, oh, you know, they're not rising, what does it mean? Well, you know, flat house prices are what the Australian economy needs. We don't need an asset price bubble. And yet we've also got productivity very sluggish, Nick.
I think there are signs of worry that this economy is not motoring as it should, with the particularly with the resources sector getting unbelievably good balance of trade, so prices at the moment. We should be doing much better.
Well, I think the real worry is that the inflation genie looks like it's getting out of the bottle. And for Wayne Swan to stand there this week and blame it on bananas was frankly ridiculous.
Talking about bananas, let's talk about bananas. The inflation figures were indeed blamed by Treasurer Wayne Swan on bananas. Let's have a look at this.
Now, because of the massive impact of these natural disasters, anybody putting fruit and veggies in their shopping trolley, particularly bananas, knows that prices do remain high. And you see that reflected in the CPI today.
Now, Nick, before I let you get onto the mockery, 5 years ago, your government, the Howard government, blamed bananas too. But look how Wayne Swan thought of the banana excuse then.
They'll attempt to use bananas as a shield. And don't forget, you know, bananas, they're yellow and they're bent.
All right, Nick, who's yellow and bent?
Well, there's nothing worse in politics than hypocrisy. And Wayne, having done that and mocked us for talking about bananas, should never have gone anywhere near bananas. But no, the really serious part of this is that if you look into the ABS figures, you know, you see very substantial price increases across a whole range of areas. Electricity up nearly 11%, petrol up over 11%, rents up nearly 5%, water up something like 12%. A lot of these are government-driven price increases, but they're really hitting households, and they're flowing through to the general economy. So I think there is a big inflation problem looming. I think that is going to put a lot of pressure on the Reserve Bank. If a deal is done in the US Congress over the weekend, the Reserve Bank will then be under pressure to raise rates at its meeting next week, and that's going to hurt households again. So I think the government is facing a big problem on this front, and as we've seen through the week, productivity is stalled and the government has no productivity agenda, and this is a really dumb time to be imposing on Australians another electricity tax in the form of their carbon tax.
I'm going to get onto that. Richard, what do you think? The bananas excuse, I think, is masking some real, more fundamental problems with the Australian economy.
Well, look, I don't know that the banana shield that Wayne referred to is the best defence in Australian politics. But look, I mean, Australia's inflation is slightly above the RBA range because the economy's doing quite well. Again, parts of it doing quite well. But are we heading for a double dip, or is the economy surging ahead with strong inflation? I think again we seem to be criticising everybody for everything in Australia at the moment. And inflation, look, 3.6%. The RBA is going to start to get a bit worried if it stays that way. But I don't think interest rates are going to go up next week.
Well, there's one more threat looming, of course, and it depends a lot on whether America over the next 48 hours can strike a deal on raising the debt ceiling to deal, $14 trillion of debt, and they want to raise it again. How much trouble is America in? Will that hurt us?
Oh, look, there's nothing the Republicans are more concerned about than Democrat spending. Of course, most of this debt's been accumulated under successive Republican governments where the debt ceiling went up and up and up. The real problem for the US isn't the debt ceiling, and it's not tomorrow's economy. The real problem is America going to be taken seriously around the world if it's willing to play short-term political games like this at the expense of their long-term credibility? It's a very risky game.
I think it's more like America, but this may be the end of the century of American power as the economy goes down and down and down. Nick, what's the impact on us?
I don't think they will default. The risk, though, is that the US economy and its recovery stalls, although profits are up and there are a lot of good signs coming out of the US economy, but the political system in America is dysfunctional, while the economy is actually inherently strong. It remains the most entrepreneurial, innovative, inventive economy in the world, and I don't buy this line that's sort of the end of the American century. It's still a powerhouse of an economy, but it's lumbered with this dysfunctional political system and massive overspending, governments that have spent beyond their means for years and years and years.
And a president that's flapping his hands.
Well, and Obama looks incredibly weak in all this, sitting back saying, oh, Congress, can you, put a deal in front of me? I mean, a lot of people bag the Tea Party. I actually think the Tea Party's been a fantastic influence because they've belled the cat. The US has been spending way beyond its means. It's got to get spending under control. Its public finances are a complete mess. The debt is huge. Obama, like the Gillard government, panicked in the face of the GFC and spent like, the proverbial, and now they're paying the price for it.
Now, you mentioned the carbon dioxide tax. This is a terrible time to introduce it. Richard obviously would disagree. I want to show you the government's latest scheme to tackle global warming, and it involves making a different kind of carpet. Hear it from Julia Gillard.
Making it from a renewable resource of cornstarch means the amount of carbon pollution, carbon dioxide generated in making the carpet is cut by 60%.
Will these magic carpets save us from global warming, Richard?
Well, who could say? The beautiful thing...
It's preposterous, isn't it?
Well, look, people want to innovate. Nick's just talked about innovation in the US. Why shouldn't carpet, God bless it, be made out of cornstarch? But, the reality is, with the proposed emissions trading scheme and carbon price initially, it's up to individual companies to go and make this decision. The beautiful irony of what Tony Abbott's proposing is that under the direct action scheme, can you imagine the grant application from this carpet company?
Well, the government's got plenty of direct action models in itself.
No, let's be clear about this. The direct action scheme under Tony Abbott would require the carpet company to write in.
For everybody?
No, they'd write in and they'd say, we've got this cornstarch technology, look how it's going to reduce emissions, and would the taxpayer please pay me to roll out this new technology? So if you want to mock, the carpet, it cuts both ways.
I want to mock them all. This is a terrible tax, terrible idea, ludicrous solutions. Richard Dennis, thank you for joining us. Nick Minchin, thank you for joining us. And coming up, hug it or eat it. The Gillard government decides the great global warming debate.